Have you ever wondered why some people have this deep, unshakable faith while others are just, complete atheists? Especially today, right? In a world that's so full of science and technology, the fact that belief persists so strongly is one of the most fascinating human mysteries out there. So what does the science of our own minds have to say about why we believe?
We've all got questions about it, right? Like, is it actually good for you? Is it a source of genuine well-being? Or is it kind of like a crutch? And does it actually make us better people, more moral? Or is it, a little more complicated than that?
And that right there, that leads us to the biggest question of all. What is the real difference maker between someone who believes and someone who doesn't? Is it a choice? Is it how you were raised? Or is it something even deeper?
We're going to dive into what the science has to say, and for this we're using The Psychology of Religion by Professor Vasilis Tsaroglu as our guide. So this isn't about opinions or hot takes. We're sticking to the evidence, to the research. Okay, so you might be thinking, can you really study something so personal, so intimate with science? Well, yeah, you can. Psychology actually gives us a really powerful toolkit to do just that by looking at the thoughts, the feelings, and the behaviors that make up this incredibly fundamental human experience. And look, this isn't some niche little topic we're talking about. You might not always see it depending on where you live, but more than 70% of the entire world's population identifies with some kind of religious tradition. It is a huge part of the human story. So how do psychologists even define religion? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. Tsaroglu breaks it down into what he calls the 4 B's. First, there's believing. That's our brain's need for answers, for meaning. Then you have bonding, our emotional need to connect with something bigger than ourselves. Next is behaving, which gives us a moral compass. And finally, belonging, that deep social need we all have for a community. From a psychological standpoint, real religion is what happens right at the intersection of all 4 of these. All right, so that brings us to the classic debate. Maybe one of the biggest questions out there. Are we taught to believe, or are some of us just kinda wired for it? Yep, it's the old nature versus nurture argument, and it's totally central to this whole topic. Basically, the research boils it down to 2 huge forces. On one hand, you've got socialization. That's your family, your culture, the society you grow up in. And on the other hand, you have your individual dispositions, your unique personality, how you think, and the big life events that happen to you. And let me tell you, your environment is unbelievably powerful. The single biggest predictor of what you believe is simply where you were born. If you're born in Pakistan, there's a 96% chance you're going to be Muslim. Born in Greece, you'll most likely be Christian Orthodox. The point is, none of us choose the first environment, religious or not, that we're dropped into.
So how does this socialization actually work? Well, it's pretty specific. Your parents' beliefs are a huge factor, and the research shows it's especially your mother's. It's even more powerful if both your parents share the same faith. And get this, if your family is part of a religious minority, it can actually make that religious transmission even stronger. And of course, this cuts both ways. Being raised in a totally non-religious family is a very strong predictor that you'll be an atheist as an adult.
Okay, hold on. That can't be the whole story. Because we all know families, right? Where one sibling is super devout and the other one is a total skeptic. If it were just about your upbringing, how on earth could that happen? This is where our individual psychology really enters the picture. So let's dive into the personality of belief. There are so many stereotypes floating around, but what does the research actually say about the kinds of traits religious people tend to have? First things first, let's bust some common myths. The research shows that, on average, religious people are not any more emotionally unstable than anyone else. They're not necessarily irrational, but they do tend to lean more on an intuitive thinking style rather than a strictly analytical one. And the whole dogmatic thing, that really only applies to specific, more fundamentalist forms of religion, not most believers. Okay, so if those stereotypes are off the mark, then what are the real personality traits that keep popping up in the research, again and again across different cultures and different faiths? Well, scientists have zeroed in on 2 big ones.
The first big one is agreeableness. This is basically a personality that leans toward empathy, toward trust, compassion, and forgiveness. People who are high in this trait really value harmony and getting along with others.
And the second major trait? Conscientiousness. This one's all about a preference for order, for stability, for self-control, and following the rules. It's a need for structure. So think about that for a second. The profile of a typical religious person isn't about being unstable or irrational. It's about valuing harmony and order.
And here's where it gets even more fascinating. Studies on twins and families show that religiosity is partly heritable. Now, this does not mean there's some kind of God gene, okay? That's not how it works. What it means is that the genetic leanings for traits like agreeableness or that need for order can make a person more receptive to a religious message if it's in their environment.
But wait, our beliefs aren't just stamped on us at birth, right? They're not set in stone. Life happens, and certain key moments, both good and bad, can completely change our path.
Yeah, the research is really clear on this. Big negative life events can be powerful triggers. Things that rock our sense of control, our sense of meaning and safety, like losing someone you love, getting a serious diagnosis, or even just being forced to think about your own mortality, can lead people to look for the comfort and structure that faith can offer.
But it's not all doom and gloom. It's a huge mistake to think religion is just something people turn to in a crisis.
It turns out that these really powerful positive emotions can also open that door. Psychologists call it self-transcendence. You know that feeling? Like when you're looking up at a sky full of stars and just feel awe or that profound sense of compassion for someone? Those moments, when we feel connected to something much bigger than ourselves, can absolutely ignite our spiritual side.
Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. What's the big picture here? The psychology of why we believe isn't a simple story. It's not some coin flip, nature versus nurture. It's this incredible, complex dance between the three. The culture that raises us, the personality we're born with, and the knockout punches and beautiful moments that life throws our way.
And all of this leads to one last really big question. Given how deeply religion seems to be rooted in our psychology, fulfilling these needs for meaning, connection, morality, community, will it actually survive in a world that feels more and more secular? The science suggests that as long as we humans have these deep needs, well, the search for something to believe in isn't going anywhere. But what do you think?